All right, today we're diving into Matthew chapter 20, specifically verses 17 through 28. This is one of those passages that just completely turns our ideas about leadership, ambition, and what greatness really costs totally on its head. So let's kick things off with a big question this whole section forces us to ask. What's the actual difference between power and greatness? We all think we know, right? But as you're about to see, the answer Jesus gives is, well, it's pretty revolutionary. So the scene opens in verse 17. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem for the last time. You can just feel the tension building. He pulls his 12 closest followers aside, away from everybody else, because he needs to tell them something incredibly serious in private. And in verses 18 and 19, he just lays it all out there. I mean, with shocking detail. This isn't some vague hit. He gives them a play-by-play of his own betrayal, his condemnation, the torture, the execution, and then he caps it off with that game-changing line. And the third day, he shall rise again. Just look at how specific this is. It's not a fuzzy prophecy. It's a step-by-step roadmap. Betrayed to the religious leaders, condemned by their council, handed over to the Romans, and then the horror of the crucifixion. But he doesn't end on that note. He ends with the resurrection. So after hearing this absolutely earth-shattering news, how do the disciples respond? You'd think they'd have a million questions, right? Nope, nothing, just silence. The reality of their master actually dying was so unthinkable to them that the whole rising again part it didn't even compute. And this is where the story takes a really jarring turn. What happens in the very next moment is almost hard to believe, and it shows just how far off the disciples were from understanding what Jesus was all about. So verses 20 and 21 tell us that right after Jesus predicts his own agonizing death, the mother of James and John, Salome, comes up to him with her boys, and she asks for the two most powerful, most prestigious jobs for them in his kingdom. The timing is just, wow. Now, you gotta understand, this was a huge ask. In any kingdom back then, sitting at the king's right and left hand, that meant you were the most powerful person besides the king himself. They were still thinking about this whole thing in terms of earthly power and political glory. So how do you think the other 10 apostles felt about this little power play? Well, verse 24 tells us they were moved with indignation. To put it mildly, they were furious. But why? And this part right here tells you everything about where their heads were at. They weren't mad because James and John made a spiritually tone-deaf request. No, they were mad because the two brothers tried to get a leg up on them. They all wanted the same thing, power and status. But Jesus, he sees this. And instead of just shutting them down, he uses this awkward, ambitious moment to teach one of his most important lessons. He's about to completely reframe what being close to him actually means. It's not about glory, it's about sacrifice. He looks right at them in verse 22 and basically says, "You have no idea what you're really asking for." And then he hits them with this question. It's so deep. He's asking, are you really ready for the cost of following me this closely? Can you handle what I'm about to go through? And let's be super clear, when he's talking about a cup and a baptism, he's not talking about a literal drink or getting wet. These are powerful, heavy metaphors for the overwhelming suffering, the persecution, and the violent death that he's about to face. He's asking, can you really share in that? And what do they say? With this kind of bold but totally clueless confidence, they just shoot back, "We are able." And Jesus, knowing exactly what's in store for them, says in verse 23, "You're right, you will. You will indeed share in my suffering." And boy, did his words come true. James became the very first of the 12 to be killed for his faith. And his brother John, he lived a long, hard life of persecution and exile, outliving all the other apostles. They absolutely drank from that same cup of suffering. But then Jesus adds this really important detail. He tells them, even though you'll share my path, those positions of honor you're asking for, they're not mine to hand out like party favors. They're prepared and given by the Father according to his plan, not human ambition. Okay, now we're at the absolute heart of the passage, verses 25 to 28. Jesus brings all 12 of them together, and he just lays down this completely revolutionary teaching on leadership that separates the kingdom of God from every other kingdom on earth. He starts in verse 25 by stating the obvious, right? He's like, look, you guys know how the world works. Rulers lord it over people. The so-called great ones are the ones who boss everyone around. This is power as they've always known it. And you can see the total contrast here. The world's model is all about power over other people, being in charge, calling the shots. But the kingdom's model? It's a complete 180-degree flip. Greatness isn't about being served. It's about becoming a servant. Then he drops the hammer in verses 26 and 27. But it shall not be so among you. He draws a line in the sand. He says, you want to be great? Then you have to be a servant. You want to be first? You have to be willing to be everyone's slave. He completely redefines the terms. And here's the most powerful part. He doesn't just preach this idea, he is this idea. In verse 28, he points to himself as the ultimate proof. The Son of Man, the King himself, didn't come to be waited on. He came to serve, and to take that service to the absolute limit by giving his own life. And that word ransom, it's huge. A ransom is the price you pay to set a slave or a captive free. Jesus is saying that his own life, freely given, is the payment to liberate all of us. That is the pinnacle, the absolute peak of servant leadership. So, the bottom line of this whole incredible teaching is this. In the kingdom of heaven, the pyramid is flipped upside down. Greatness has nothing to do with how many people serve you. It has everything to do with how many people you serve. And that leaves us with a pretty challenging question to think about, doesn't it? If true leadership, if true greatness is all about service, well, who are you serving today?